All right, this is Rachel Pulling's um, Think Aloud, and I chose to do Stone Fox by John Reynolds Gardner and illustrated by Marcia Sewall. So, the first thing I looked at was the title of the text, and it made me think, what is this book going to be about? What am I going to be getting into when I'm reading this? And immediately thought that, okay, it's probably about a gray fox. Um, I kind of thought about that term stone cold fox, which means someone who is good looking, but um, didn't think it would be about that. I definitely thought it would be about a gray fox. Um, and I know this is a chapter book, so I'm assuming that it's for um, a grade level student. Um, and I'm excited to read it because I like animals and I like foxes, so makes me think that it will be kind of an adventure since it is about a fox. Then I looked at that picture, kind of the inside picture, and I synthesized some new information that that picture brought to me. And I thought about, okay, this picture um, is confirming that it's a fox, but actually kind of looks like a dog. So, and I see how the dog and the boy are standing and they're standing close to each other, they're facing each other. You've heard about the thing where if your belly buttons are facing wherever your belly button's pointing, that's you're comfortable with that person. That's something I've heard. So it kind of made me think that, okay, dog's a man's best friend and they look very comfortable with each other. So this could be a dog, even though it says stone fox. Um, and it makes me think that, okay, it's about a boy and a dog and their adventures. I see the dog is holding something, but I'm not quite sure what the dog is holding. I also see that it looks like they're on a farm, so I'm guessing that the setting is going to be on a farm. And based on the boy's overalls and his dress, it looks like it might be set um, back in 1910s or 1920s, sometime back in the day. And then that cute little farmhouse with the porch in the back also makes me think that too. Um, so it just kind of gets me thinking about what is this book going to be about. All right, if we look down at chapter 1, it's called The Grandfather. So this boy is at an age where he probably has a relationship with his grandfather. So that makes me think that this chapter will be about the boy's grandfather. Maybe he lives with his grandfather in the house. I kind of think back about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and I think about the boy and his grandpa living in that house together. Um, Also, the term grandfather is used, and I don't call my grandpa grandfather, and I don't know anyone who calls their grandpa grandfather. It seems very formal, and it seems like a term that would be used back in older times. So I'm assuming that this is set back, like I thought before, based on the picture, this is set back in an older time. Um, and then I read the first page. So there was a lot of new information in the first page. We learned that the boy is Willie, and I'm assuming that that's a boy in the picture. And Willie and his grandfather live on a potato farm together. Um, and that was some information that first jumped out at me. I also noticed that they seem to um, really connect with each other. It talks about how they laugh and how they cry. They laugh so hard they cry. But then also, I see a sad time coming. I'm making predictions that there will be a sad time because his grandfather is not getting out of bed. And he looked sad. So that was page 3. Page 4 kind of talks about um, their routine. So I noticed myself slowing down my reading pace to really focus what was going on this page. And I seemed concerned for Willie, and I think my concern made me slow down, and just so I could gain more understanding. And I found myself rereading, which I knew was a strategy for Almazy and Fullerton. A strategy for a good reader was to reread in order to fix things, but I felt like I did this more for gaining more understanding. I also analyzed the text. I saw that the author uses more suspense on this page because there's the ellipses there. It says, that is, until this morning. And I think that suspense makes me slow down a little bit, thinking about that. Then I also notice that with the analyzing the text and the suspense, the author goes through their typical routine, but then talks about this time it's different and kind of pulls you in there. So thinking critically, I wonder where Willie's parents are and why they have not been mentioned on the farm yet. So is it just Willie and his grandpa there and the dog? So I wonder if that will be addressed in the future. So that was me thinking critically. Moving on to page 5. I look at paragraph 1 and 2. This was a lot of new information to take in. We learn about the new dog. So I'm synthesizing all this new information. We learn his name is Searchlight, which at first I just kind of skimmed over his name. And then we know that he's a big black dog, which makes me think, oh, it's about a stone fox. So stone, I think, is gray. So I'm wondering, is there going to be a fox in the future in this book? I learned that Searchlight is a female. She's old. And then I learned that she and Willie are born on the same day over 10 years ago. So we know Willie's older than 10 years. And we know that Willie and Searchlight might have this connection because they were born on the same day. So I think about that too. Looking beyond paragraph 1 and 2, I synthesized more information because there was another character brought in. So I know that a mile down the road, the doctor lives there. And then I found out the doctor was female, which made me think, okay, what time period could this be if the doctor was female? Because usually you didn't hear of female doctors back in the time period. So actually, I had to look this up. I discovered that there were female doctors in 1910, so this could be possible. So that was synthesizing all that new information. Page 6, looking at this picture. We see the doctor, and it is a female wearing a dress, like the book said. She looks older. She has glasses, and it looks like she's reading outside. So I'm making predictions. I see that Searchlight is standing in front of Willie, and he seems to be running ahead. So it looks like Searchlight knew where they were going. So Searchlight is familiar with their surroundings. He seems to just have that strong connection with Willie. So I'm predicting that in the future, the dog knows something and might help save Willie's grandfather later in the book. Reading on page 6, I analyze the text. Doc Smith states that Grandpa isn't answering because it might be a trick. So I looked back to see, and I made sure that, they talked a lot about Grandpa being kind of funny, and he seems kind of like a funny guy in town, like the class clown of the town. So that made me think about that. And going back to page 4, we did see that Grandfather likes to laugh and make jokes, and we know that Willie and Grandfather like to laugh together. I analyzed the grammar. I said I noticed things that Willie says like real early, and just the way that he speaks and the grammar he uses makes me think about the TV show Andy Griffith. So this had me making connections back to TV shows I watched growing up with my family. And Odie, the young boy, who I would assume to be about Willie's age, they use a lot of similar words and phrases. So that ties me back to the connection of the time period. If we look at page 7, I see that I started analyzing the text, analyzing the grammar. The doctor uses the term hitch up I can assume that this means a horse based on the context clues that I have been given. And also looking forward, Palomino, it seems to be the type of horse. The type of horse. So it says Rex was Doc Smith's horse, and then we learned he was a handsome Palomino. So I'm assuming that means a Palomino is a type of horse. Continuing on to paragraph 4. New information came my way, and it talks about Searchlight running ahead. Searchlight was leading the way, and so I just see him as this dog who is this guiding light. They're on this search, and he's this guiding light for them. So it's funny how that's the name, and just makes me predict that he's leading the way, or synthesize information that he's leading the way. And making those connections. Does he solve problems? Moving on to page 8 here. There's a picture. And once again, we see Searchlight being the first one to grandfather. So I'm really making predictions in this picture because it looks like the grandmother looks calm. But Willie's looking at the doctor for answers. And then Searchlight is there guiding the way. So I'm predicting that Searchlight is going to do something in the future to guide Willie, help Willie. Looking on page 9, those first few lines, Doc Smith and Willie are talking, and I made a lot of inferences, or I was thinking critically, because the way that they were speaking, the doctor seems very straightforward in her words, and she's very serious, and her tone is almost harsh. Must you ask so many questions, she says, and I sense a very harsh tone because I think she's stressed and worried about grandfather. And then if you continue on from paragraph 7 to the end, she's starting to seem reflective now. Okay, now she's looked at grandfather. So I'm making inferences because of her tone now. She seems calm. She seems reflective. She doesn't rush to fix anything with grandfather. So predicting what's going to happen in the future, I guess that he has died. Especially when she asks Willie questions about crop and the money. So making predictions here, thinking that grandfather has died. And then also thinking critically because the tone in little Willie's voice seems frantic as Doc Smith asks him questions. Page 10, synthesizing new information. I was confused when first reading this. Just like Willie, I didn't know what was wrong with him. So I was synthesizing, taking in that information. And in fact, then I had to adjust my reading pace. I had to slow down and I had to think about that information that Doc Smith was providing. So I continued to read slowly, and then I really visualized those tears rolling down grandfather's face as Doc Smith was saying this to little Willie, and Willie was responding. Page 11, I have a lot of questions, and so I was making predictions what would happen in the future. Little Willie is determined to help his grandfather, and when he says this, Searchlight barks. So that makes me make that prediction again, that Searchlight is going to help him in the future.